double check here, make sure that we're actually broadcasting everywhere we should be, and then we'll get started. In the meantime, if you're just joining me, go ahead and try to answer this week's little trivia question. What causes fall bums to bloom? I think you might find the answer enlightening a little later on. Patty says her mums are really growing huge. I have one that survived through the winter, and I trimmed it back when I was planting my flower bed. It's probably about a month ago, but it is really taking off too. So let me make sure I got some stuff muted here. Okay, we are ready to go. Yep, that's the key, is cutting them back to promote fall growth. That helps them branch out, it triggers branching, and I'll get into that in the video that I have here a little bit later. I head out to the greenhouse. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to this week's episode of Bob's Live, our weekly show right here on the internet. And right now we are broadcasting on both Facebook and on YouTube. So if you're following us on Facebook, go ahead and give our page a like, and that way you can get a notification whenever we go live. And the same goes for YouTube. Go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click on the notification bell, and that way you'll get notified every time we go live, which I shoot for every Tuesday at 5 p.m. for our live broadcast. And of course, you can always head over to our website at bobsmarket.com, and there you can find links to all of our social media like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. And we're also over on TikTok at Bob's Market. So you can check that out. Also, each week we send out on Wednesday to our mailing list a recipe. And then on Fridays we do a blog post. So you can find that information over at bobsmarket.com, our website. And you can subscribe over there and pick what you want to get. So some people just get the blog post, some people just get the recipe, and then there's some folks that get both. And also, you want to check out our website this Friday. Actually, just got the copy a little bit ago, but our customer appreciation sale is going to start this weekend. So I'm going to have the information for it up this Friday on what we have on sale. So you'll definitely want to check that out. Well, first things first this week, I thought we would head out to the greenhouse. It's been a while since we've been out in the greenhouse because this time of year, there's really not a lot going on. It's always kind of funny because we get a lot of people that come in and apply for jobs this time of year, or they want to apply. And really, right now is our slow season because we've already grown everything and shipped it out. So there's not a lot going on as far as growing plants. This time of year is our time to catch up on maintenance and all of those little tasks that kind of got pushed to the side during the peak growing season. But we do have some crops that we're growing right now, and one of those is fall mums. So, yep, fall for us starts in June. So let's head out to the greenhouse and take a look at our fall mum crop. This morning I am down here at our field house location where there's a bit of a fall chill in the air because behind me we have part of our fall mum crop. So this time of year, even though it's still springtime, we're already starting on fall with mums. So we get our mums in as unrooted cuttings, the same as a lot of other crops, including our poinsettias that we'll start getting in a little bit later, in probably the next few weeks. But they start off as cuttings, they get stuck into soil, and then we grow roots on them. So let's take a closer look. So if I'm really careful, I can pop one little plug up out, and you can see the roots there growing on it. So it takes a few weeks to grow roots on them, and then we'll transplant them into the containers that they'll be sold in. And after they get transplanted, we'll let them grow for a little while, and then we'll give them a trim, and that helps them kind of get bushy and helps promote the blooming later on in the fall. So here's one that's further along, and you can really see the growth on it. And I'm about to get ran over by the irrigation boom. So, oh, there we go. So the watering boom, it is programmed to kick on and off automatically to help keep these plants hydrated as they grow roots. So it's monitoring the temperature and the humidity in here, and then deciding when it needs to kick on and off. So mums bloom based off of day length. So as the days get shorter, after the summer solstice, heading into fall, that's what triggers mums to develop their blooms, and it's what leads to fall color. So, I almost got ran over by a watering boom in that video. They sneak up on you. Down in the greenhouse there, and a couple of our other greenhouses, we run a system called VPD, which is vapor pressure deficit. I don't know, that's sort of out of my wheelhouse, but basically it pulls in a bunch of data from different sensors and can kick the irrigation system on and off automatically. And it was kind of ironic that that happened because I happen to be working on one of those systems right now and have the manual laying here beside of me. Anyhow, at the end of that video, I talked about how mums are dependent on day length. So as the days get shorter heading into fall, that's what triggers mums to bloom. And a lot of plants are like that. They're dependent on the length of the day. So another one of those plants that's really seasonal that we have after fall mums is poinsettias. And to trigger poinsettias to change their color, they have to be exposed to so many hours of darkness per day for at least a 2 week period of time to trigger the color change. So whenever we grow our poinsettias, we make sure that we basically treat them with darkness. So a lot of times we're growing crops that need supplemental lighting going into the fall and winter. But with poinsettias, it's the exact opposite. In fact, a few years ago, we were growing poinsettias in the greenhouse right behind the market. And due to recently switching out some of the exterior lighting, um, it made that area brighter at nighttime. So they actually had to wrap the greenhouse in dark shade cloth to create those dark conditions to trigger the color change. So yeah, that's kind of an interesting thing with some plants. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about this week is another project that I have going on in my meadow garden. So we visited it a couple times this year with different projects, mostly planting wildflowers. And this project that I'm covering this week is planting some shrubs and bushes. So what I want to do is I'm kind of starting with a blank slate of just the natural grasses that are there in that meadow. And I kind of want to, over time, build up a tree and shrub structure and get more shade into that part of my yard. Really, my entire property doesn't have any trees or bushes on it. So I had a blank slate when we bought the house. And it's my plan over the years to kind of transform at least that end of the property into more of a natural looking, kind of lightly managed garden. So this week, what I did is I planted 2 bushes. And I talk about it in the video, but you know, we're not going to be selling this house anytime soon. So I'm kind of approaching this at a snail's pace and kind of just as my budget and as my time allows. So, you know, a lot of times people hire a landscaping company to come in or buy a whole bunch of stuff all at once and do a huge project. For me, I'm just sort of chipping away at it a little bit at a time over the years. And for me, that's part of the fun of gardening, is you can see that transition over time. Gardening, it takes place at a lot slower rate than the world around us now. And it's nice to kind of put yourself in that world for a little while. And, you know, that's one of the great aspects of gardening, is it can be an escape and kind of give you some time to decompress and kind of slow down and work at nature's pace. So, well, let's head out to the meadow garden. Today we are out here once again in my meadow garden, where I have really one of the last big projects for this year, and that is planting a couple of shrubs. So I picked out these bushes mainly because of the size that they get. And part of my idea is to start to build up more of a tree structure and shrub structure here in the meadow garden, because when we bought our house and moved onto this property, there wasn't a single tree or shrub anywhere to be found.
So we basically had a blank canvas to start with. And something else that I want to do is start to create a little bit of a privacy barrier between the garden here and the highway, which is in view behind me. So to do that, we have a couple shrubs here. This is a butterfly bush, and it'll get about 8 feet tall. This particular variety, it's called a magic butterfly bush because it actually has 3 different colors of blooms on it. And then this other bush here behind me is a 7 suns flower, and it'll get about 10 feet tall. So I'm actually going to plant it a little bit further back to kind of create a little bit of a screen between us and our neighbors. And that'll also, help add to the privacy here in the meadow garden. But this 7 sunflower, the name of it is, well, when I saw it, it just set my heart aflame. It is called Temple of Bloom. And as an Indiana Jones fan, I just couldn't pass that up. So let's move these to where they're going to be planted, and we'll go from there. Up first, I have the butterfly bush, and I'm putting it right in behind some wildflowers that I planted last year. And these wildflowers, there's a mix of varieties and they bloom at different times throughout the year. So right now, we have perennial dianthus that is blooming, and it looks amazing. So I'll grab the camera and give you a closer look at those because they're just beautiful. And in fact, this planting of wildflowers, I'm going to expand it further down that way later on this summer. Planting a bush is a pretty straightforward process. It's just like planting a tree. You want to make sure that you dig the hole to about twice the size of the container, and you want the top of the soil ball to be level with ground level. And that's really all there is to it. So let's go ahead and start digging and get this thing in the ground. Alright, so that is this butterfly bush planted. And all that I really need to do now is come in and water this in. And something that I did, since this is out in the middle of the field, is I dug up the sod, planted the bush, and then I put the sod back in around it. And what that'll do is it'll kind of act as a natural mulch on top to help hold in moisture as this butterfly bush gets established. And something that I forgot to clarify is that this is a magic butterfly bush because it has 3 different colors of blooms. Well, if you were to get down and actually inspect the base of this plant, it's actually 3 separate butterfly bushes. So when you see something advertised as a magic butterfly bush, it's actually 3 separate bushes planted together, and that way they intermingle as they grow. Kind of like how we do our mixed color hanging baskets. So with those hanging baskets, you'll see 3 different colors of, say, Calibrachoa, and that's the way we do that. We actually plant 3 separate plants in the hanging basket. Alright, I'm going to take a little breather, and then we'll move on to the next bush. So it is pretty daggone toasty out today, and it's important on days like today to stay well hydrated. So I've got a bottle full of water here, and luckily it is insulated because the outside of it is actually burning my hands, it's so hot. But inside, nice cool water. Another thing, I'm wearing my straw hat today, and that is helping to keep the sun off of my head. And it's also well ventilated where it's a straw hat, so it does help keep my head cool. And then also, I'm not wearing dark collars. So I've got on a white t-shirt today, and that's helping reflect the sun and keep me cool. Now, you might be asking, why don't you work early in the morning or late in the evening? Well, for me, with having hay fever, that's when the pollen is the worst. So even though it's hot and sunny right now, it's either sweat a little bit more and be a little bit more uncomfortable in the heat, or have allergy symptoms for maybe an extra couple days. So for me, it's a trade-off, which I am a little bit stuffy right now, so I'm hoping my allergies don't get worse because I'm planning on mowing grass later on this afternoon. Alright, so now I'm ready to plant this southern sunflower, which is a hard name to say. It's southern-sunflower. That sounds like sunflower, which is not. This will get about 10 feet tall, so it's going to make a nice kind of privacy screen here in the meadow garden. And my method for planting this is kind of unorthodox, and a lot of it comes down to both time and budget. You know, I don't have the budget or the time to plan out an entire landscape and plant it all at once. So I'm doing it a little bit at a time over the years to build up this garden. So this is the first plant to go in here, but it definitely won't be the last. I plan to add trees around it, and hopefully over the years I'll get some more shade here in the meadow, because today it is pretty daggone sunny. This area where I'm planting this, it's kind of a natural open spot. Where I planted the butterfly bush over there, I kind of weed-eated out an area and made a clearing to plant it. But right here, there's really not any tall plants that grow right in this one particular spot. And that's something that's kind of interesting, is the mix of plants throughout the meadow garden that just occur here naturally. So you never really notice when you have just a lawn. In an area that's somewhat wild like this, as far as I know, nobody's ever seeded grass on this area. It's all the natural grasses that occur around here. So it's pretty cool to kind of see the different patches of different species of grass. So I'm going to go ahead and start planting this. It's a lot like the last one. Just make a hole twice the size of the pot and plant it right at ground level. So, well, let's go ahead and get it in the ground. And now my final step is to water everything in. And depending on the rain, I'll probably have to give this supplemental water throughout the summer. And that way it'll just help it get established.
So that is planting some bushes in my meadow garden. And as I said, it's a slow process. I'm just adding a few large things each year and then doing a bunch of smaller projects like the wildflower plantings. You know, seed packs are relatively cheap, and that's one thing that I can do to start adding perennials into the garden. And probably the last addition that I want to make this year is planting at least another fruit tree. I've got an apple tree and sort of a cherry tree. If you go back and look at previous Bob's Live episodes, There was one that I did back when we had the ice storm in the wintertime, and my poor little cherry tree got flattened by the ice storm. And it has some leaves on it, but it looks pretty pitiful, so I'm just going to sort of let it go and do its own thing. Now, the apple tree, it looks pretty good, but I would like to add, a few more apple trees, probably some pear trees, and probably another cherry tree or two to take the place of that one. And then I would like to add some larger shade trees like oaks or maples or something like that. Um, Ideally, I want it to look more natural, so I always try to go with sort of random locations when I plant stuff, if that makes sense. Um, Something that I've struggled with is making it look natural. Um, Whenever I plan out the space, originally it was like a big rectangle, and I was like, yeah, it's nice, but I want it to look, more organic. So I've added on a wildflower garden that has a nice arcing sort of edge to it. But where I butted it up against the original meadow garden, I've got this like laser straight line. So that's something that I need to work on, sort of meshing those two together over the next few years. And then on the back side of the property, my big vegetable garden that I had like last year, you would see it in videos. I decided basically to cut it in half. So I'm letting half of it become lawn again. And then the other half, I'm doing a section of raised beds. And then I'm leaving half of that section for like 4 or 5 rows of corn or beans or different things like that. Um, but that's a project that I haven't even gotten started on yet this year because I need to first address some issues with that garden plot. And mainly, I have an invasive species that's in there that I need to address first, and that is Johnson grass. It is one of those things that's almost impossible to kill, and I have a huge clump of it right in the middle of my vegetable garden. So before I put down the weed cloth and start building the raised beds and bringing in mulch and topsoil and all of that stuff, I want to get rid of that Johnson grass first. And unfortunately, the only way to do that, literally, if you look it up, the only thing that'll kill it is glyphosate herbicide. So I'm going to treat it with that and then let it set for a really long time to hopefully get rid of that and then go from there. And with putting in the raised beds, the area where that is where the raised beds are going to go. So that soil is going to be totally separate from the soil where I'm treating. So that's sort of my plan. Gloria says, "Wow, you have so many ideas and a lot of energy." Yeah, I have more ideas than I have energy or time. So, as I've said, it's one of those things. I've got a long to do list, and I'm just sort of chipping away at it when I get a chance. So, well, that is all that I have for this week. So, until next time, keep growing.